Yeah, so we did not, Adaptive Path did not start as a strategic company. We were a web user experience firm. We were a design firm. But when clients would come to us to do design work, we often asked a lot of questions. And they didn't have answers to those questions. And so we had to then get those answers to those questions. And that was often through things like user research and prioritization exercises and other things. And we kind of backed into strategy because we realized that you couldn't do good design without having the strategy well articulated, or else you were just going to be throwing stuff against the wall and hoping that it sticks. 15 years later, a lot of people still throw stuff against the wall and hope that it sticks, so not everyone's learned that lesson. But again, this is kind of what I mean by accidental. That wasn't the goal. The goal was never to be a strategist. I think that would be kind of a weird goal, honestly. The goal is to put something out in the world, but it turns out in order to put good things out in the world, you need to step back and you need to have something of a strategic bent. I just want to pull out a few kind of highlights, favorites from my experience doing experience strategy, and also the kinds of methods that I think, when I looked back as I was preparing for this talk, the kind of methods that I still find are the most valuable, right? I tried a whole bunch of different things. At Adaptive Path, we have this UX intensive. I would teach design strategy. You know, there was a lot that I'm pretty familiar with a bunch of tools, but I wanted to kind of identify the ones that seem most salient even today, even if they're ones that I've been using for 10 or 15 years. The first one is around prioritization. Probably the single most important thing a strategist can do is help an organization prioritize. I have not been in a company since I left Adaptive Path, nor have I had a client when I was at Adaptive Path that wasn't trying to do too many things with the people, resources that it had. And so prioritization becomes key if you don't want to spread folks too thin. And this is a lesson I just relearn over and over and over again. And I think that's one of the areas where strategy and strategists and UX strategy in particular can be extremely valuable, is helping organizations, is informing that prioritization. So the way that we ended up doing a lot of prioritization at Adaptive Path was a simple 2x2 grid. When we started, and this was an actual, it's an actual one from an actual client. It's a little bit hard to see, but we had this, the y-axis was importance, low importance to high importance, and the x-axis was, we called it feasibility. Low feasibility to high feasibility, basically what were, so importance to the business, and then how likely were we able to make a real change for that thing in this project or in this space, right? So this was we were redesigning the website for a financial services firm, and one of the things that we realized is there's things that were important, retaining financial advisors, retaining high-value clients, that we weren't going to actually have a lot to be able to impact. Those were relationships that happened outside of the website. And so while it's important to the business, we had to recognize we're not going to design to try to support that because that's a fool's errand. What we're going to do is work on the things in this upper right-hand corner where we think not only is it important, we can actually make a difference. I found that prioritizing on a 2x2 is way more powerful, like more than twice as powerful as prioritizing just on a straight list. But if you try to prioritize with much more than that, it got overwhelming, right? You start doing all this math. A 2x2 we found worked really well to help clients just kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. Let's focus here. So prioritization. We're going to hear from folks at Disney a little bit later. One of my last project at Adaptive Path was for Disney, working on their website, their Disney Store site. And throughout our time at Adaptive Path, we did a lot with design principles and experience principles. And my favorite one, it turned out, was the last ones I ever delivered at Adaptive Path. I was looking for others, but these were the ones that held up best. And you probably all are familiar with experience principles, right? A set of statements that you try to uphold as you kind of then execute on the design. And it's, for me, a key point of strategy, right? Because it helps bring a team together, it helps orient them, not just your team, in this case, if it was us and the client team, but also as you go from design to development, et cetera, you always check back on these principles to make sure that you're living up to them. So we had 6. Don't break the spell, which was basically like, It has to stay up. It can't be broken. No 404s, no weird errors, all those types of things. Deliver uncommon service and improve specialness. This was a key to the experience because they wanted Disney Store to feel more like Nordstrom's and less like Toys R Us. Distinct personality. This was something that I don't know. Often this isn't a principle that you get to do a lot of, but because it's Disney and they have all these amazing characters, you can kind of take advantage of those personalities and do something with them. And then finally, this came out of our research, we realized that people buying products on the Disney Store was not about buying the products, right? It's mostly moms, occasionally other like grandparents or aunts and uncles, et cetera, usually a relative buying it for a child. And they're not interested in the product, they're interested in a relationship that they have with this child that the product can help kind of manifest, right? And so kind of providing that fulfillment and connection between the people was important. So what we did, what we realized is why don't, as part of the checkout process, allow the grandparent to record a video, branded video, that then there's a little short form URL that you can type in Christmas morning and you can be there, right? The grandparent can kind of be there Christmas morning whenever that present is open and wish the child Merry Christmas. This was one of those kind of goofy ideas that you develop in concept generation, but the client really loved it, and so we kept kind of designing for it, and the client kept loving it, and then when they launched it a year and a half later, it was still there. They actually created the technology in order to support this connection because they realized how important it was. And I actually think these experience principles were key to making clear how important it was to again, not be about the product, but be about the connection between people. Another exercise that I've had a lot of success and happiness with, this actually doesn't come from Adaptive Path, this comes from the first company I was at after I left Adaptive Path called, the company was Inflection, and this was a product called Archives, is the design the box exercise. And this is kind of filling in for any of those kind of big team co-creation exercises. I find design the box to be a particularly powerful one, right? And that's the idea of if your thing that you're designing was in a box on a shelf, what does that box look like? And I find that this activity really is great for getting a lot of things that are buried in people's minds out of their heads. You break up into teams, so each team designs a box, so you have a set of conversations at that team level. And then you bring it all together and you have the whole team kind of have a set of conversations about these boxes. And then you have this physical artifact that is there, that you can't forget, that kind of manifests what it was you were thinking about. Another tool that I've had success with, we at Adaptive Path called the Service Evolution Map, or Product Evolution Map. And it's kind of demonstrated. This isn't our diagram. This is the Spotify model for product development. We had one at Adaptive Path called the Cupcake model. I actually like this one better. But they're basically the same point, which is when you're building a car, don't kind of build it piece by piece, because no one wants a tire. No one wants a tire in a chassis, right? Build whole products that delight all the way through, right? And it's kind of fascinating to me how few people really still get this. You know, when you live in a world of, Paul was talking about agile and backlogs and all this, it still gets very feature-oriented, and it's just like checking stuff off. We created at Adaptive Path, this is actually from Archives as well, though, we created this model of thinking about how do you stage experiences over time. So this is my most controversial statement. The entire field of user experience emerged to accommodate insufficient product management practice, right? And design thinking, We have had to come up with, because product management practice, initially it was very kind of business driven, right? MBAs, managing products, they were the mini CEOs, right? So they were worried about business challenges. Then with Google, and I'm curious to hear what Molly says about her experiences at YouTube, with Google it became very engineering driven, right? Larry Page was kind of famous for saying, I don't want managers telling my engineers what to do. So engineers then became product managers telling engineers what to do. So then it became very technically minded. And when I joined Groupon, like they only hired CS trained product managers because they basically saw product management as engineering management. But the problem is, if you're only thinking about business, you're only thinking about engineering, you're missing out on something, right? You're missing out on people, the users, the customers, right? And that was this gap that people in design recognized. Information architects in the mid to late 90s recognized this. Interaction designers, interface designers recognized there was like this whole area that people weren't paying attention to. And we kind of, in order to answer those questions, we developed what we now call user experience as a way to kind of fill that gap. But user experience, this is the part where I get to maybe piss you off. User experience kind of belonged in product management. They dropped the ball. And we ended up picking it up because we wanted to get it done. But there was this just gap. And so that's why I think we continue to have this tension between what I see as strategic user experience and product management, and why I see a lot of my old kind of UX pals, my strategic UX pals, becoming product managers, right? Because it turned out that's what they were doing all along. Then it leaves this question, what about UX design, right? UX strategy is maybe product management, and what about UX design? Well, so I would argue, of course there's UX strategy, right? I hope we're over this conference trying to figure out if the core tenet actually is real. You know, there's a lot of debate. Is there such thing as UX strategy, or is it just product strategy or whatever? And I think of course there's UX strategy, right? In the same way that you have brand strategy, in the same way you have business strategy, right? It's another type of strategy. It's a way to inform a broader strategy maybe. It's not the only strategy, but it exists. It is real. There's just no UX design.